It's a great pleasure to be here and to listen on these wonderful talks. For me, this is also very special because 4 years ago I started the project named Art&Science Meeting in Gdansk, Poland, and since then I curated or invited other people to curate several exhibitions dealing with particular this issue. And it happened then in 2011. I have organized a conference with the title Towards the Third Culture, without question mark. So some people talking here, Roger Malina, he was not present, but he had a talk. Roger Malina was in Gdansk as well, and we had a strong discussion with him about what art can provide to science. At first, I'd like to introduce a certain issue not discussed so far here. I mean, this is how science, the position of science changes from the point of view of philosophy of science, from methodology of science. Because when we discuss the issue of science with a particular specialist, physics, chemists, people from different fields of science, they have a little bit different vision of the science, its possibilities, than when we discuss with philosophers of science. And I just took from my colleague from media theory field, Francesco Cassetti, a certain observation. In one of his books, in the very end of the 20th century, published, he presented the line how science has been changing in the second half of the 20th century. And he proposed to start with Ernest Nagel, for whom science was still very hardcore kind of activity, formal device, very rigid way of contributing empirical concepts, very limited number of postulates, relationship between them also carefully organized. So it was this kind of science we somehow refer when we talk about relationship between art and science. But this is not this vision of science we are facing now, because afterwards it was Popper. For him, science theory was something not that much properly organized. This is just a conjecture. This is what people imagine as a possible truth in the way of going towards some achievements. And with Kuhn, this is even more social than formal, because scientific theory becomes a point of view shared among the scientific community. So finally, Cassetti said, scientific theory, this is just the shared knowledge. This is just knowledge. I didn't mention Paul Feyerabend. If I did, I would say, following him, everything goes. But everything we can say, we can express, might have scientific value. So, this is this context. We are talking now about relationship between art and science. And this is also that in this situation, we should say that productivity of knowledge is what should interest us the most, because this is what makes science itself. Science becomes science because it produces knowledge. So the question is, can art produce knowledge? First of all, we can notice that this development in the field of science makes borders between science, between humanities, between social science, cultural science, blurred. This is not so strict division as we was observing in the end of 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, where science and humanities has different bases, different ideas, different ways of working. But how about art? What art can do in this situation? I'd like to draw your attention to a certain book published in 1994 by Edward Small. This is the book Direct Theory. It was the book about experimental film and video art, special kind, probably I should say, because I don't think like Small that all kinds of experimental film, experimental video art is exactly the example of direct theory. But let's say this kind of direct theory is this sort of artistic activity which is mostly interested in itself. So this is art studying art, art trying to present its own theory. So art as theory actually is what Small was talking about. So direct theory, according to him, this is the attempt to recognize and explain some existence. So art becomes self-referential practice trying to examine. So if we talk about cognitive possibilities of art, how art can produce knowledge, so this is the first step. Art produces knowledge about itself. Artists become researchers of art. Not only art historians, critics, theorists, but artists themselves make the knowledge. I would say that this, what we are talking about here, relationship between art and science, actually is the last step in the longer process. We are starting with meta art, for which conceptual art, of course, is the most important example. This is what Small called direct theory. This is art examining itself. This is film as film. This is photography as photography. So this is art analyzing itself. The next step, this is institutional critique. So artists play the role of critique, of curators, researchers, but they are still involved firstly in the area of art. They examine art as certain institution. But this is also the first step towards what you were asking the previous speaker, because art is becoming examining the social fields, ask questions never asked by people belonging to different fields of social activities. And I would even say that this is actually a very important border in the development of contemporary art, because actually we used to say that whatever we choose to talk about from the field of contemporary art, we can always find some relationship of this to Marcel Duchamp. So Marcel Duchamp was the beginning of almost everything in contemporary art. But when we are talking about cultural studies perspective, and especially the scientific approach, that's the beginning of a new era in art. There's no reason anymore to refer to Marcel Duchamp when we talk about bioart, about artificial intelligence in art, or robotic art. This is the new field for artistic activity, and we actually need the new paradigm to analyze, to find a way to understand what are the connections between art and other disciplines, between recent art and previous forms of art. Actually, I think that you have noticed that museums of contemporary art, not to say modern art, are still located in this Duchampian context. So this is almost impossible to find works representing this art and science field in this kind of museum. They are still based on another platform. They still refer to the past instead of searching the possible future. Art and science searching for possible future. So there are those 4 steps of development of art in the process of becoming the field where agents produce knowledge. First, knowledge about art. Next step, knowledge about art institutions. In the third part, culture and all its structures. And finally, scientific knowledge becomes the field that attracted artists. So we can ask what role art can play in the process of producing knowledge. This is the basic questions. If we want to talk about sort of partnership of artists in the field of research, we have to discover if it is possible for art to produce knowledge, scientific knowledge, explicit knowledge, and to be accepted by science community as such. Sometimes this is the most difficult. And of course, can art play a critical role towards science? This is the question also referring to what was asked 10 minutes ago. And of course, I would answer same way as my previous speaker, that obviously the big part of art and science activity is just to examine those fields of scientific research which are not commonly presented in the scientific papers. Of course, we can also talk about this relationship from different perspectives. So what is the role of science in the context of artistic activities nowadays? How can art changes under the influence of science? What is the position of art in the field of scientific knowledge production? And there are actually 2 perspectives I'm interested in the most. One, this is the way how art organizes audience participation in the process of knowledge production. And images become, in this perspective, the source of knowledge. Creating images is the way of producing knowledge. But this kind of knowledge, actually, and this is the first perspective, is being produced in a participatory way. I mean that experiencing of artwork is the only way to get closer to certain knowledge could be found in this kind of artwork. So the viewers, receivers, participants, they have to participate in the project. So responsibility for building the knowledge must be shared. So like in the participatory or interactive art, the artist actually organized the field of certain activity from the side of viewers, participants, to get closer to certain problems, certain topics, certain issues, to make them also responsible. So art becomes part of the wiki world, where knowledge is being produced in different fields by participatory activities. So art is becoming sort of toolkit, I call it, for distributed knowledge production. And the second is to be named shorter. Artworks nowadays sometimes become just explicit form of knowledge. And I will be showing some examples to prove that we can talk not only about this sort of mediated way of organizing knowledge exchange during the exhibitions, but also we can talk about this explicit way of proposing knowledge, and we can talk about artists as scientists. I'm coming back to the question Jean-Marc Leblond asked yesterday about the numbers of culture, because he asked himself, how can we talk about the third culture? We have just one culture. I have different problem with this issue, because I assume, I follow anthropologists in this, that we have countless number of cultures nowadays. So, how can we talk about the third culture in the world when the cultures are in thousands? So, the only way to talk about the third, the only way we can talk about the third culture is that we can consider them in a paradigmatical way. So this is not just one culture, but this is the form of culture, which might be countless again. But this is the special kind of culture, the discussion about which started in second half of the 50s, when C.P. Snow presented his famous lecture we all refer to when we talk about the third culture. So when we talk about the third culture, we talk about countless numbers of cultures organized around specific structures, specific qualities, where science, art, technology becomes partners, when they all can produce knowledge, organize different experiments. So, actually, I'd like to remind, because we all know that, but sometimes forget, that when C.P. Snow was talking about the necessity of organizing the new kind of culture, this third culture was already been produced. Because there were several artists in the 40s and 50s, not maybe very numerous and very important for the future of the art, who already started this dialogue. C.P. Snow was probably right that dialogue between science and humanities in the second half of the 50s was difficult for both sides. But in the 40s, 50s, artists like Georg Kepes in MIT, or scientists like Frank Malina, they just starting the great experience in the next field. Malina, scientist in the field of art, Kepes, artist in the field of science, and we can find roots for art and science in this 40s, 50s practices organized by those artists, and not only those, they are sort of emblematic figures for this process. So when John Brockman repeated after 30 years after Snow that there is still no dialogue between scientific culture and traditional humanistic culture, he was already not right, because this dialogue was quite far developed, but mostly in the field of art again. I'd like to talk about three different forms of dialogue between art and science, I told already to the previous speaker that I have sort of similar idea to him about how to describe dialogues between art and science. So I'm talking about science for art's sake, art for science's sake, but art for social reality shaped by science. In this second kind, I want to talk about this kind of art where we have to do with what I previously named the way of producing shared knowledge, first of all. Because there are several artworks where we see the strong influences on the artist from the side of science. The purposes artists try to pursue don't belong to art in traditional sense. They belong to science. They ask, for example, about how race influence our capabilities. They ask, for example, in which way genetic transformation change our perspective of life. They don't produce knowledge. In this sense, in the third sense, when we can talk about artists or scientists, they don't produce knowledge, but they arrange with the artworks the special experience for the viewers, for the audience, for the participants. This kind of experience has nothing to do with traditional aesthetic perspective. And not only, I mean not only the beauty as the target for this kind of activity. I mean also different kinds of minimalistic, material approaches in art which still keep the experience of art and the viewers of art in the field of art. In this case of experience proposed by such artists and such artworks, we go beyond the border of art. We don't ask about artistic qualities. We don't ask about the form. In spite of the fact that these approaches propose some forms and they organize also emotional responses on the side of the viewers. But this is not the main purpose of it. So when we talk about the first kind, science for art, so we can notice that lots of artwork nowadays uses scientific imagery in films, in installations, in video works. There are images taken with super microscopes or telescopes recording images from or different machines recording invisible processes in our reality. But we can see installations for which artists use different scientific apparatuses. In many cases, however, we observe that this is still just to create the form, to provide the aesthetic experience. So this is this field where we can say that art just makes use of science, of scientific achievements, of scientific instruments, just to make aesthetic structures, just to develop the possibilities of artistic expressions. And quite often, those images taken with the use of science are aesthetically quite traditional. So I spent some time observing, searching on the net and then checking different works awarded, because there are plenty of competitions for scientific images as artworks. And they are like paintings, they are like photographs, they are very aesthetic. But this is not what we are interested in, I guess, when we talk about art and science. So I just took some examples showing how art can use scientific processes, tools, concepts to reshape, refresh itself. With this example, I must add that when I talk about these three different ways of organizing relationship, dialogue between art and science, I don't actually talk about different types of these relationships. It was my first idea to talk about different types. Then I realized that actually the most ambitious, the most complex relationship between art and science in particular work we can notice, the more often all three types of these relationships are present in such works. So actually we can talk about different levels of relationship between art and science. Sometimes we have to do just with one level, sometimes with two, and finally in works which from our perspective look the most interesting, we can find three of them interacting very intensively. So this piece by Philip Demer and Gary Stewart, it would be actually a step into the new context, into this art for social reality, for being, where we can notice, we can experience as a part of the encounter with artwork, the process within which the world is changing, the new perspectives, new horizons. And this is also Adam Zarecki, who as well is going further than only to use biological equipment. So, as I thought, the second example, this is this art creating environments within which the audience can encounter this new world and start to think, realize the transformation the world is. And this is not because someone might think this is just the popularization of science. No, I don't want to talk about popularization of science in this case. Of course, there is art, we can say it does something like this, but this is not the case. As I told, this is just organizing the experience, artistic experience, driving the viewers towards the new vision of world, of different scripts for the future, all of them written by the science, because this is science to produce our future. And this is example Eduardo Katz, Natural History of Enigma, and Edunia, beautiful plant coming out of genetic transformation of petunia with the gene taken from blood of Eduardo Katz. So this flower proposes us new vision of producing life. This is Monika Fleischmann and Wolfgang Strauss, and the way world becomes the information. The operation in the world is the operations on the informations. And George Kepes, Cell Tango. This is artwork introducing the viewers to the fact that reality nowadays is hybrid. And this is not only real material world, but also virtual, and they are all communicating with each other. That what we do in one of them brings some results in another. And this is Paula Gaetano-Adi, artist from Argentina. This is the sculpture, but at the same time the robot. When you touch the sculpture, you realize that the sculpture feels you're touching. And it's getting wet, getting nervous. So this is the way to introduce the perspective of artificial life. And I think this extremely important example, I don't know if you know the art of Paul Van Os and this work, because for me this is a wonderful example. This is the real laboratory machines running the real DNA taken from 4 members of Paul Van Os family. They all are different color, they are different aspects of race they represent. And Paul Van Os referred to some concept. This book on the left, the picture, represents this concept that race create your abilities. You can achieve something only if you are racially well constructed. So Paul Van Os organized this contest. You see those 4 small figures, like from the early photographs. Each of them represents one genetic material and represent vitality of this genetic material. So this is father, mother, brother and sister of Paul Van Os, who donated their DNA. During the exhibition, the technician has to replace DNA every couple of days because it's going in the real time. This is not the cinema, this is the real research. To show finally that you can't say any of those 4 contestants is better than the other. You can check the whole history, because such an installation, I exhibited this piece at the Biennale exhibition in 2010 in Poznan, and for almost 3 months those 4 people virtually ran trying to present which of them is better than the others. And it never happened because every day somebody else is in the front. So Paul Van Os presented in this piece that we can't talk about race as a real source for our abilities. From the scientific point of view, this is not a real experiment. You can't prove too much with it. But it introduces the audience into certain form of reflection. And this is why I put this example in this second group of the artworks. They just propose to reflect on certain phenomena nowadays, to notice different aspects of world, to subvertly react towards different statements and ideas exhibited in the scientific field. And what I consider the most interesting from our perspective. Several examples. Zbigniew Oksiuta, a Polish artist, for several years worked in Germany, in Cologne. Now he is in the States. And this is his piece, The Space Garden. And he is researching the way, the possibility for plants to stay alive in the space when there is no, they have no orientation when it's left, when it's right, when it's top, when it's down, because it rotates, this construction rotates all the time. So all the plants inside have to adapt to this new situation. There's no gravity. They can't stay in the ground. Ground is not down like the over. So they have to, and there were very interesting observations Oksiuta made because of that. Something completely different. I was hesitating for a while to include this example. His Bunting with me. This is the piece about transformation of the internet. Internet considered in the beginning of its history as a space of freedom, equal possibilities for everyone. And Hugh Bunting took the article from online Wired about his art and checked and proved that almost each word composing the text is now taken as a part of some .com. So when you click, the quality is not very good, but I propose you check this, because this is from the screen, to check this work on the internet. It's still on, and you will see most of the words indicate that when you click, you go to another site, and this site will be .com. So in this way, Hugh Bunting showed us that we should forget about this romantic vision of the internet, of the cyberspace. This is just the space for economic exploitment. Before I go further, I'd like to tell that in the context of the works I'm going to talk, we can say that all main kinds of scientific approach are well represented. So we can find basic art and science activity, applied art and science activity, and research and development as well. So we can also talk about engineering research in this area. So all main approaches in art are represented in the art and science field. The first example, Oron Catts Ionat Zurr. I've taken victimless leather, but of course I could take semi-living war dolls or some other pieces by those artists. The artists deal with the concept notion of life. They observed that actually nowadays even scientists in the period, in the age of new fashion of using or producing biology, synthetic biology, is not to get to know better the nature. Synthetic biology is trying to produce nature and is producing every day. So even in this new context, Oron Catts Ionat Zurr proof biologists refer to systematics of life coming from the period of Linnaeus, and how to talk in a serious way about bioethics in the situation when we don't have the real reacting to the new situations of synthetic biology world concepts of life. So what they do as the artwork is actually developed further with the essays, papers they write, they present at the conferences about the concept of life. Patrick Tresset, I took the photograph of myself during this year Ars Electronica when 5 Paul, the robots, were drawing my portraits. Unfortunately, I haven't got yet my portraits, but I can show you some other works produced by robots. Patrick Tresset, after bipolar illness, they stopped writing by himself. He couldn't, as he told, but he was studying informatics previously before he studied art. So he came back to his profession as programmer, and together with another scientist in Smith College, they were working for a couple of years to produce software, sort of creative, intelligent software drawing pictures. Of course, all the pictures are, as Patrick stressed, same style he used to draw. So we have actually to do with informatic programming parallel to cultural programming. Usually in art, professors in art academy program his or her students to work artistically in a certain way. Here, Paul the robot was programmed as well, but in different form. And he is a very good drawer. Another example, Diane Gromala, Canadian artist. She, like millions of people all over the world, she suffers from chronic pain, and she considered her artworks as the way to deal with this pain. So sometimes there are artworks, installations proposing navigation in virtual reality, sometimes meditation and virtual reality. But in all the cases, we have to do with this sort of activity when the artwork is being produced only, first of all, to help someone to cope with the pain. So this is applied arts and science approach. And this is proved. Several research were done, not only by herself, to prove that this is the real result for the patients when they experience the installations. Because instead of using pharmacological instruments, she tries to help. I don't know how to call it, viewers or patients, both, to cope with the, not to remove it, because this is for someone suffering from chronic pain. This is impossible to just get rid of it, but to cope with it, not pharmacologically, but with a special mind approach to it. So art is sort of training how to cope with pain. Miart, semi-living artist. The artist who is mainly responsible for this work is Guy BenAry, but there are a number of them to participate, and this is, I took it from the paper produced by the group of artists and scientists from Atlanta Institute, from the group of Steve Potter group, and from Australia, from Symbiotic. And this is the abstract from this article. This is the description of the artwork and outputs of the artwork. And when you read this article, you can hardly realize that this is the artwork exhibited in the galleries, because it looks like main purpose for the producing of this artwork is just to make some steps towards solving some problems dealing with how to produce hybrids, this neural, digital, robotic, neural robotic entities. Please have a look at keywords of the article representing this work. This is the only artistic accent in this, all the others not. So, those three perspectives I have found analyzing recent, I mean last 20 years especially, development of art and science approach. Of course, each of the artwork, besides the fact that I can just put it in the special kind of them, propose its viewers enormous quantity of different concepts, theories, issues, and probably going deeper in this, we could make many distinctions going further. But I think that for me it was the step towards creating the representation of art and science developing nowadays. And just I go through exhibitions I curated myself, or some invited curator produced for art and science meeting project in the Center for Contemporary Art in Gdansk. So we started with exhibition of Malina and Kepes, and Monika Fleischmann Wolfgang Strauss, Vesna James Gimzewski with the nano project Remove. Mignonneau and Christa Sommerer, Laurent Mignonneau Christa Sommerer exhibition. So there are 4 of the pieces exhibited. Evolve, Desjardins, Life Writer and Phototropy. Then Oron Catts Ionat Zurr. Vorn. This year there are 3 exhibitions. Historical machines by Vorn. 3 figures of speech, Feingold, Curatorial, the animal, vegetable, minerals, everything, and hair, and retrospective of Stelarc. So this is prosthetic hair. I brought with me the publications produced within the project. I'm leaving this for the library of this place. So if you are interested, so they will be waiting for you here. For the next year, we plan to make the exhibition of Guy BenAry. His new works, not ready yet. I'm a little bit nervous because the artist didn't answer to my email last week, so it looks like he's not ready with the piece. Jasia Reichardt, whom you might remember, because she curated this great, important historical exhibitions, Cybernetic Serendipity in 1968 in ICA in London. She will curate for us her view on the beginnings of historical robotic art, and in 2016 Nicolas Scheffer, which is a little bit problematic because some of the most important works are just, they don't work, they are damaged. So we have to start with repairing them, and next we'll be able to exhibit. Thank you.